Hi, this is Dakota from Geekritique, and you've just entered the Vactor-Verse.
Yes, you have entered the Vactor-Verse. Welcome, one and all. I am your host, Vactor. I'm with a very special guest today. Not only is he an MCU timekeeper, not only is he a Star Wars historian, but he's also an Avatar chronologist. He's been studying canon one title at a time. Mr. Dakota, all the way from Geek Critique YouTube channel. Dakota, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Wow, what an introduction! I just got to say that's probably of all the podcasts that I've been on, that was probably the best introduction I've had yet. So I really appreciate that.
I appreciate you, my friend. You are the number one source. Anytime I need some type of timeline explained, you are the very first person that I go to. And anyone out there who's listening right now, if you are confused about any geeky property, the timeline, I'm sure Dakota has made a video on it. And if he hasn't, if you go to the Geek Critique YouTube channel and you can't find your favorite whatever fandom and you say, hey, I want the timeline for that, just leave a little comment down below here. And Dakota, I'm sure, will make a wonderful video on it. So, Dakota, you are, like I said, the best timeline creator online. So I just want to get that out of the way. That I've been following all of your stuff, and you actually have appeared on my podcast before, even before it was the Vactor-Verse. I think I've told you this before. Your episode, your appearance is the most watched episode in the history of my podcast. So I'm going to say that you are the good luck charm to my podcast. So thank you
Okay,
very
so
much for
so
coming
long as
back
you
to the Vector.
so long as you preface it that I'm talking about the MCU timeline on your on your thumbnail or
Yeah.
somewhat, yeah, then yes, you're gonna get some views. Unfortunately, like the rest, I hate the Marvel shirt. Yeah, the rest of the content I do is very hit or miss. But I do love making timeline content. I don't solely make timeline content, but lately I've been making pretty solely timeline related content. I made a video about My Neighbor Totoro, which was fun. I have done a couple Avatar videos. I think I mentioned that on the Comic Book Kaiju podcast, and
Yeah.
I have some fun ones in the works. I haven't like expressly said this anywhere that I'm creating this, but here's a first for you. I'm doing a Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves timeline. I've been
Ooh,
studying the Dungeons and Dragons
nice.
Forgotten Realms history a lot, and there's just way too much for a full video. But when it comes to just the Honor Among Thieves side of that Forgotten Realms D&D universe, I can make a whole video on that. So I'm excited about that. I think that's gonna
Oh,
come soon,
wow.
hopefully. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I'm excited as a fan. I never grew up with Dungeons and Dragons. It wasn't something that was on my radar, but I would say within the last 5 years, I've started to become more and more interested. And that film was, I think, to this point, I haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy yet. I will say Dungeons and Dragons is my favorite movie of the year so far. So, um, until Across the Spider Verse, until the Flash, until uh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem comes out, Dungeons and Dragons has the top spot for now. So I'm excited
And
to see that.
and that's fair. That's fair. It's a fantastic movie. I personally had it at my top as well, for a long time.
Oh, nice.
Um, but when it comes to stuff that we grew up with, like nostalgia titles, The Flash, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there's something that just pulls us in, and it leaves a more lasting, I don't know, stain in our fandom brains.
I actually want to get to your fandom in particular. I'm going to ask you for
Sure.
your origin story. But before I do that, I do want to
Hmm.
talk about the movies that are coming out this year. Do you have one that you are anticipating the most now for the rest of 2023?
I had the privilege of seeing Guardians 3. Yeah, I was able to go to an early press screening. I wasn't invited. It was like a plus one sort of thing. So,
Ah,
but it was still one of the like a really fascinating and just
mm,
wonderful experience. And when I tell you that that film it's blown up to the very top of my MCU list. I will
ooh,
say, like there are things I dislike about it, and that's good. That goes without saying for any MCU project, with any comic book project. Really, there's always going to be
right.
that thing that kind of irks you a little off. But when it comes to Guardians 3, I've never had a MCU project just sit with me so profoundly for like it's been almost a week at this point, and I'm still thinking about like, man, that scene and wow, this
Mm.
it hits you in the best ways possible. It's a fantastic film. Um, so I look forward to hearing your reaction to Guardians 3. I think you're seeing it on Friday, you said?
Yes, correct.
Nice. Nice. That it's going to be fun for you. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Whenever I see someone has seen the film, I'm so excited to say like, what'd you think? What'd you think? So that's fun. I'm really excited for the Flash. I didn't know what I was going to
Yes.
get into when before the trailers came out, and with all the Ezra Miller stuff that was happening, I almost I had already dismissed the film honestly. But when
Mm.
I saw the trailers,
Yeah.
wow, that looks like a really good movie. Looks like a lot of fun. I can't wait personally. What they're doing with Supergirl is interesting, and Batman with Michael Keaton, very cool. What else? I'm surprisingly extremely excited about the Marvels. That's coming out later this year.
Ooh.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think the concept of just three characters that whenever they use their power, they just switch bodies is just like really cool.
Yeah.
It's different,
Yes.
we don't
Yeah.
have
That
anything like that on video yet.
right. That
So
that's something that when I was if I was a teenager, that would blow my mind. I would be like, yes, this is gonna be the greatest movie of all time. So I'm right there with you. I'm really looking forward to that. That trailer looked so much fun just from
yeah,
seeing them swapping positions. So I'm really looking forward to that. The Marvels a little bit later this year. How about Blue Beetle?
how about Blue Beetle? That looks pretty good too. I remember I was a big Blue Beetle fan before New 52. Um,
Mm.
we'll get into that origin
Yes,
story of
yes,
like
yes.
comics and everything and all that. We'll get into the nitty gritty.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Blue Beetle looks great too. Pretty much everything that is on the horizon so far, I'm pretty excited for.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I think as far as other films that are coming out, I'm drawing a blank. But
Would
Dune,
you
the trailer for Dune came out.
oh,
Dune Part Two came out
man.
today, and
Yes.
dude, that looks solid.
Mm. That was a man, that part 1, I took my wife to see it, and she wasn't really expecting anything, but she came out of it, like, loving it, wanting to watch it again. I think when it came out on HBO Max, like, 30 days later or whatever it was back then, she was, like, immediately wanting to watch it again, so I know she's really, pumped for part 2, and I am as well.
Awesome.
I love Denis Villeneuve, one of my favorite filmmakers, so I'm really looking forward to that.
It's
Man,
amazing.
there
Isn't
was
it
another
amazing
one
that
that
we have? Oh, I'm sorry. Isn't it amazing that
oh,
we
yeah.
have such a like a high, um, how do I say it? Like an art house director creating such like high production sci-fi. It's the coolest thing
Right.
ever.
Yes.
I love it so
Yeah.
much.
Blade Runner might have been kind of like the 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 geek, catapult kind of pushing him up and raising him up, and I think the awareness of Denis Villeneuve and, because before, I think it was more geeky people, movie, cinema people that were into his work, but I think with Blade Runner and now with Dune, I think it's just kind of hoisting him up
Oh yeah,
there,
for sure,
and,
for sure. Yeah,
um, I think he's even in the Christopher Nolan category of, like, okay, this is a really good director, but he's making these big popcorn, action movies, and, um, people's awareness of the film is, so high, so, yeah, I'm really
yeah.
looking forward to that. Actually, another one that I'm really looking forward to, Mission Impossible. Are we gonna get a
Mm.
Mission Impossible timeline video?
Oh, I have no idea. You're the first person to ask me about it, so I don't know. Leave it in the comments. Maybe I'll get to
Woo!
it at some point.
Man, I
Yeah.
I've loved, like, all of the ever since 3, I think when J.J. Abrams stepped in, and the progression of the Mission Impossible films has been amazing. Each stunt, trying to top the last stunt of the last movie, and we've had these scenes filmed with the IMAX format.
I know.
I've
I
just
know.
been blown away by what they've been doing with
Yeah,
those, so really looking forward to this, part 1
for
of the
sure.
final Mission Impossible.
or so they
But
say.
man,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, Tom Cruise, I won't believe it until he's not around anymore. Until he has passed away, I think he's still going to be doing Mission Impossible movies. But I digress. Dakota, I want to get your origin story and specifically comics, but anything geeky. Like, how did you get into these geeky endeavors, whether it be movies, comic books, animated shows, video games, whatever it is?
My first love was Star Wars. And I spoke about this on the Kaiju podcast, but yes, my first love has always been Star Wars. I remember one of my earliest, like, just solid memories was being at Toys R Us, and I don't remember what I was getting, but my dad saw the VHS of Empire Strikes Back, and he grabbed that one. I hadn't even seen the first. I hadn't even seen you know, the A New Hope at that point, but he put Empire Strikes Back in, and when I tell you that after that I just watched these films every day to the point where I drove my parents crazy. Yeah, no, that was nuts. That was my thing. And then, you know, I was big into Star Wars, like action figures. That was kind of my first real collection. Unfortunately, I don't have like most of those anymore, but um when it comes to comic books, my my origin story is probably pretty similar to most people's origin story around my age. You know, we were just walking down the street. There was a bus full of, you know, vats of acid, crashed, got it in my eyes. And then I saw a comic book store. No, no. Um, well, it's probably right after I saw X-Men, X-Men 2000.
Ooh,
Um,
nice, nice.
I think that was my real introduction to like wanting to get
Mm.
into this lore. I mean, I had seen the first couple Superman films from the 70s and 80s, and I had seen the Batman quartet up until that point, and um, you know, it was fun. It was I was all of 10 maybe. I was 9 by 2000. Yeah, so I was I'm a 90s kid. Um, and I don't know why I decided at that point I wanted to get into comic books, but I remember the first one that like I actively bought and read. It was X-Men Volume 2, number 108. It's the
Ooh.
issue where they're mourning the death of Moira McTaggart and Senator Kelly. And I didn't know any of these characters when I read that book. I didn't know a thing. I read that though. When I tell you I read that cover to cover so many times to the point where the staples came out of the back. I still have the issue, and I had like I've restapled it several times, but that is my first memory. Just page after page of like there's how do I put it? Um, there's a guy who's read every single Marvel comic, Douglas Wolk. He wrote a book about it about a year ago called All of the Marvels. He read all
Oh,
616 from start to finish, um, and it's a fantastic read. But he kind of expresses that this is there we are. Yes, X-Men 108. That's my yep, Chris Claremont. Yeah, that image
nice.
is bringing back. It's in my. I have like 4 long boxes right here, right next to me. I don't have the time to like sift through that and find that issue. But, um, man, what was I saying?
Perfect.
Uh, I forget what I was talking about.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, 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 no. It's okay. Where was I? X-Men 108.
I I can
Anyway,
edit this
yeah,
part. It's fine.
I read that so many times that oh, Douglas Wolk. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. So
Yes, that's right. That's right.
he wrote about entering comic books. Like he's often asked where the best entry point is to a comic book, and he just said pick one because no matter what, you're going to be confused about something. He calls it the Mountain of Marvel because it is the longest. continuously running fictional universe, and it's the biggest body of literary work that is all contained within the same universe, and that's an impressive feat.
Mm.
Um,
Oh yeah.
because Marvel has never rebooted their universe to the degree that DC has rebooted their universe a couple times at this point. And what he suggests to new readers, and obviously this is way after I was a new reader, but what he suggests is that just take a chance, pick up an issue. Hopefully you'll like it. Hopefully you'll want to read more. Hopefully you'll want to learn more about this section of what's happening in the story, and you continue with the next issue. And I did. I got X-Men 109. It was 100-page monster. That's what it said on the top. 100-page monster, and it was a Christmas episode or a Christmas special. And yeah, so it was, and those two comics, man, I still have them, but they're beat up. And that quickly changed over time. With my consumption of comic books, I learned to like really appreciate, like, not folding the pages in any which way. Here it comes. X-Men 109. Yep, there it is. Good
Nice.
times. That's a lot of memories in that book. Um,
Nice.
yeah, so I've become like an on and off reader over the years. Unfortunately, a lot of the stores that I have come to frequent over my life have like come and gone at this point. Very recently,
Mm.
like I moved to a new place in New York, and I found this comic book store that was like 2 blocks from my house, and I
Oh.
spent so much money over the course of a year. And then suddenly after Christmas, they were just like, well, this is our last week. And I'm like, what? No.
Oh.
And you know, it's funny. Like I love. I just love comic book stores. I love the culture around them. I love. Thankfully, someone, after they had like closed up shop, someone bought the shop and kept it a comic book store, so it's still there. It's just different ownership, and it's a little
Nice.
bit of a different vibe. But yeah, that's unfortunately happened like I think 5 or 6 times in my life where I like get like really invested in a comic book store, and it's just like, well, time to find a new one.
Man, that happened to me also with, my local comic book shop. It was Atomic Comics, and they had
Mm.
5 locations across Arizona. I went up to the store one day, and they just had a sign on the door, "Hey, we're bankrupt. The whole company's like, the whole franchise is gone." And it was like, "What?" Like, there was no
Oh.
warning. We could see inside the store. We could see the books. We're like, "There they are. We want the books." But, they ended up coming back, I wanna say 10, 15 years later, and they just recently changed their name. But, yeah, it's that same scenario of it kinda makes me fearful for the future of physical locations and stores because even when I first got into going to the stores, their focus was shifting from just selling comics to D&D and Pokemon cards,
Mm.
things that were bringing in
Collectibles,
revenue.
yeah.
Yeah, and so
Now it's
that was
pop
like, man,
figures.
yeah. As a comic book fan, it's like, hey, I love that stuff too, but the comic books are why I'm here. And that's the whole reason why this store exists. So that kind of has me, like I said, fearful for excuse me, the future. And especially
Yeah.
with a lot of the digital stuff where I'm pretty much 95% digital at this point. And
Mm.
it comes down to convenience and actually mostly convenience, but, space, not having the room for long boxes and stuff, and I'm just wondering about the future. Do you have any thoughts on the future of physical media? I think in general, whether it's DVDs, comic books, the the is the digital revolution inevitable? Like, can we have physical at this point?
We can. I think it comes down to it finding a niche, you know?
Hmm.
Obviously, when you think of, I guess the best example of this is records, you know? Records went
Yes.
away when
Right.
CDs came, and then then MP3s came and so on and so forth. But within the past 10 years, the record community has popped back up. People want that vinyl sound. They want the physical copy in their hands. They want to look
Mm.
through the fold and everything. And I kind of hope something similar happens with DVDs, Blu-rays, and stuff like that. Obviously, a big shift has taken hold of just media in general when it comes to streaming, and there's several different when it comes to comic books, there's several different places where you can just pay a monthly fee and you can get as much comics as you want, and that's awesome. I don't begrudge anyone doing that. I think it makes sense for your wallet. It makes sense for space and convenience, like you said. But I do think that there will always be a desire for physical media, especially in collector spaces, because as nice and convenient as a digital copy is, nobody wants like you don't feel anything from a digital copy. I don't know. At least that's how I get. But what one thing that I noticed with the changing of the guard with the current comic book shop that's near my place is the people who owned it before cared about the stories. They cared about the characters that were in the
Mm.
comics on the shelves. And the new people who own it, nice people, care about the variants, the different the
Mm.
different covers that are a little rarer, like they want to sell the
Right.
statues that only 50 have been made. And that's cool. Hey, I mean, but and I'm a collector myself. I love the idea of collecting, but ultimately I think story needs to take paramount, when it comes to the story needs to be paramount when it comes to comic books and this sort of medium, because that's how it started. That's why you love these characters. It's not because their face has been printed on the cover and it's worth $200 now. No, it's because you care about you care about this guy named Kal-El who came from Krypton. That's where it all starts. And yeah, so I'm waxing poetic at this point, but I do think that there is going to be a I think comic book stores are going away, but maybe they will come back. I think that's how I feel.
Yeah, that's a positive, hopeful view of the future, and I have that same viewpoint. And I wonder, at one point, maybe there'll be some type of a fusion of the 2, like, okay, this is a meeting spot, like a coffee shop. We can bring our iPads to the comic shop, and we can read our digital comics, and then they're also selling the physical books, because there's also that group of people, like you were saying, the niche crowd of, "Hey, I like seeing hardcovers on my shelf. I like seeing trade paperbacks on my shelf." And if you've got the room, more power to you. That would be me. If I had the room, I would have just a wall of trade
I
paperbacks
hear
and
you.
and hardcovers.
Yeah, I hear you.
So that is, the future I wanna live in, Dakota, so hopefully we can go, towards that. Now, you mentioned Kal-El, son of Jor-El, and it made me think, I don't know if I've ever heard your favorite character, and whether it be, comic books or Star Wars, do you have a favorite fictional character of all time?
It might be Superman. Um, I mean that's kind of a basic answer, I know, but he kind of like we wouldn't be talking about this if it wasn't for Action Comics #1. It wouldn't we wouldn't
100%.
be here. We wouldn't be discussing superheroes if Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster hadn't created the superhero. And
Right.
I think the reverence alone for that fact has always made Superman a character that I um, look up to, at least reverentially, because the whole genre literally rests on Superman's shoulders. Um,
Mm.
Figuratively, I like him as a character as well, and this has been said time and time again. But um, I forget who said it. I think it was in like a Kill Bill movie, but like you have characters like Spider-Man and Batman who wake up and put on their costumes, but Kal-El wakes up and he is Kal-El. Like he puts his costume on and he's Clark Kent. Clark Kent is his costume.
Mm,
He wants to be human, and I think that makes him the most relatable character ever because he wants something that he can
mm,
never have. Um, and I love that. I think that that's the most humbling way to write your most powerful character. It's
mm.
cool, and I
Yeah,
think that's
that
that's where I sit with Superman. Yeah.
yeah, that's it's very hopeful for me to hear that from you because I feel like I grew up in an era and an age where Superman was at the top of the list of superheroes. And like you said, like you mentioned, the 1978 Christopher Reeve movie and so many TV shows have presented the Man of Steel. When I think about today's generation, I don't think they've really gotten a great version of Superman because the Zack Snyder Man of Steel series is the I think what the current generation thinks of. Even though we have the Lois and Clark show that's on right now on CW, I don't think most people think of that version of Superman when they're thinking about him. That's some today it's all about the Snyderverse and the Man of Steel. Even though Henry Cavill I thought, was great, that version of Kal-El is not the version that I think of when I think of Superman. And so growing up, he was a huge part of my childhood, dressed as Superman on Halloween. And I got a lot of my morals, I think, from Superman
Mm,
as I was growing up. Oh, what would Superman do in this situation? He would eat his vegetables, and that was also Popeye. I was like, oh, yeah, he would eat his spinach, so
yeah,
I would
yeah,
eat
yeah,
my spinach. But Superman was one that I always looked up to, and I think it also had a lot to do with my father being a huge Superman fan, and just hearing him like, "Oh, I love Superman." I grew up with the George Reeve Superman on TV,
yeah.
and that's just something I think he passed on to me. But I think my all-time favorite comic book cover is Crisis on Infinite Earths number 7, where he's holding Supergirl after holding her
Mhm.
dead body, and he's crying. And as a kid, I was like, what can make Superman cry? This is like the perfect individual to me. He never cries, he never gets sad. So when I saw that, that affected me. And to this day, it's still my favorite. So Superman has a huge place in my heart. So I'm very happy to hear that you, Dakota, you're continuing to fly the Superman flag for all of us
Oh, for
fans
sure.
out there. We're
Yeah,
just hoping.
absolutely, absolutely. So when it comes
What do
to
you think about
Superman,
this?
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Yes. I was
What were
just
you
gonna
gonna
say
ask?
the
Sorry.
James Gunn stuff. Are you hopeful for this new James Gunn Superman?
Um, okay, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. So when going back to Zack Snyder,
Yes.
I do like his films. I think he has a very specific look and feel that he's going for that totally works within his Snyderverse, you know? But ultimately it isn't Superman. It's not, at least, okay, it is Superman, but it isn't Clark Kent. I don't know. It's an interesting,
Yeah.
like, I'm not
Mm,
feeling the character that I love through this
right.
iteration, even though I do believe Henry Cavill looks the part and can totally act the part. I just never got that. He never became my Superman, and I was disappointed
Mm.
by that because I think Henry Cavill had a lot going for him with that role. Um, believe it or not, my Superman, this might get a couple laughs out of the audience,
Uh-oh.
was Tom Welling from Smallville.
Ooh, nice. Yes.
And
Perfect.
going back to the show, it's not the best. It's really not. It's But when you talk about morals, when you talk about like what would this character do, I think they nailed Clark Kent. They nailed Kal-El, at least as a young version of him, and how he would react to certain things. Trying to keep the people he loves safe, keep his identity safe, um, and just a down to earth dude, like through and through for
Mhm.
10 seasons. It's cool. They did such a good job with that. Um, Everything else is debatable. I do love the Lex dynamic between him and Clark, but
Yeah.
overall, yeah, that was my show growing up. I really
Nice.
love.
I
I have a special place in my heart
I
for
will
Smallville
say
for sure.
I was a huge Smallville fan. My dad was also, and we would watch it. That was one of the few shows that we would watch together, and it just kind of it hit that sweet spot. Like we watched Star Trek: The Next Generation together. We watched
Mm,
Smallville together, um, and I think for a huge portion of the population, I think you might fall into this, that Superman or that representation of Superman from Smallville was very important. And I'm glad that it exists. Like you said, there are some questionable things about Smallville. It was the target audience was, teen girls, and it was a
yeah.
CW show, but there was some great stuff in there. I actually just watched the other day the Flash Superman episode and the race at the end
Oh, it's so
every
good.
single time. I
It's so
love
chills
that
just thinking
race.
about that. Because, he's
And
keeping up, and then the Flash turns around just like, peace. And it's perfect.
and
It's
the
so good.
yes, the look on Clark's face when he's like, he had another gear that I didn't even, and Clark was like, as like pumping, it's like as hard as he could
Yeah,
go,
yeah, yeah,
and Flash was like, "No, you're not even close." Like, so that there's stuff like that in Smallville.
yeah,
You know what? I think that those maybe the first 5 seasons to me are very special, and then they kind of start going off the
yeah.
rails. But I came back for the 10th season, the final season, uh, just because it was the end. And I don't know if you know this, Dakota, but am I am represented in season 10 of Smallville. I so Brian Q. Miller is a friend. He was a writer on Smallville at the time of season 10, and
Okay.
he liked my last name, but he didn't like it enough to keep it around. So he killed me. He made Agent Vactor a character, introduced the character, and then promptly killed the character. But I do exist. The name Vactor is said in season 10 of Smallville. So any Smallville fans out there,
Wow.
go
That's
look up
really cool.
season
Hey,
10.
hey. That's something that's pretty cool. That's cool.
I
But
was very happy about that.
yeah, to echo what you were saying, I am part of that crowd that grew up with the show, and got a lot of my almost it's I don't know if it's my moral leanings, but like there's almost like
Mm.
a quiet humility about Clark Kent that I
Yes,
really
yes, yes.
respect. That I
Mm.
just, he can just, shut up, take it like a man, and turn the other cheek, and then next episode comes and he do it all over again. It's so
Yes,
it's
yes.
great, and it's so
Yeah.
Superman, and yeah, so that's I think that is where
As
I truly learned to love the character.
Nice. As long as he didn't have any red kryptonite, Clark
Yes,
was your
yeah, he
best
was a
friend. You
jerk in
always
those
wanted him
episodes, man.
around.
It was always you
Well,
knew a
you're
season
gonna
finale was coming up if a red kryptonite shows up.
yeah, exactly. And you might get a kick out of this. I
Yeah.
switched up my wardrobe. I bought an all blue shirt and I bought an all red jacket, and I would wear it, and I thought I was Clark wearing my red cape. So I was that was the type of Smallville fan that I was.
Wow.
And
Dang.
I
I,
tried
I
to
wasn't on
introduce
that
it
level. I
to
wasn't on that level.
I tried to introduce my every friend and member of my family to Smallville. So yeah, not only that, but I actually met a ton of people, including Holdo Maneuver host Mark Vibert, we met through Smallville fandoms on the message
Wow.
boards and on Twitter. So I know a ton of people that I can trace my relationship back to Smallville. I'm like, "Oh, that person, I know him because of Smallville. Her, I know."
Oh,
Actually,
man, I'm
I
I'm
just
so happy I brought this up. I'm so happy I brought this up.
yes,
This is
yes.
all coming out. I did not know anything about this. All right, let's go. Keep it
Yeah,
coming.
I don't think I've ever shared it on the podcast before, but a lot of my guests that I would have on the podcast, I know from Smallville, and even actually I just had a screening for Andor yesterday, or I'm sorry, wait, I'm the timeline is all mixed up in my mind. A couple days ago, I just had a, a screening for Andor, and the person that we stayed with, my wife and I stayed with, I know her from Smallville. Like if it wasn't for Smallville, I would not have had a room to stay at for this Andor screening. So a ton of connections and like branching timelines in my life. If I had never watched Smallville or if Smallville had never existed, there's a lot of people I would not know to this day.
That's crazy. That's
So
awesome. That's
yes, it's too
that's
bad
your
we didn't
comic book
meet through
origin
Smallville.
story? This is
Yes,
your
yeah,
origin
yeah.
story? I'm sure your origin
Like
story
I
goes
said,
way back, but yeah.
my red cape, that was my origin.
Okay.
But
All
yeah,
right. All right.
Smallville was a huge deal for me. So I'm glad to hear that also from you. Actually, I watch Michael Rosenbaum has a podcast with
Yeah.
Tom Welling, and I was just watching the episode that they just released, and they had the creators Al Goff and Miles Miller on. So there's still Smallville stuff that I'm
That's
consuming
coming out.
to this
Man,
day.
that's cool.
Oh, Dakota, I gotta put you onto this. If you have not heard, there is a fantastic Smallville podcast called Save Me, and
Hmm.
uh it's almost like a DVD special feature just about the making and the creation of Smallville, and they get interviews, like archival footage and interviews with the cast and everything. So if you have not checked out Save Me, I highly recommend it. It is done by one of my friends, Mr. Frank Ramblings, who hosts the Beer with Geeks podcast, and he did a fantastic job. I always try to promote that and tell people, if you
Yeah.
like Smallville,
Okay.
you have to listen to this. So Save
So
Me
it's called
is the
the
name of the
Save
show.
Me. Okay. Can't forget that.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes, that's if you're a Smallville person, you have to listen to that. But
Awesome.
yeah, man, there's so much great stuff that came out of Smallville. And were you ever into the animated Superman features that came out? Things like All Star Superman and the Justice League movies that were coming out.
I had watched a couple, but I was never hugely into it. I know that for whatever reason, the animated side of either Marvel and DC never really grabbed me as a younger person. I've
Mm,
only recently started getting
mm.
into like the '90s X-Men show and the '90s Spider-Man show.
Yes. Ah,
Those are some good stuff, but I didn't grow up on that for
yes.
whatever reason. It was around
Mm.
when I was a kid, but I don't know. I was watching something else. I was watching Dragon Ball Z or something. But
Yeah.
hey, that's good too, right?
Man.
Yeah. But no,
Yeah.
the X-Men. I mean, sorry, you were talking about Superman and everything. I
Yes.
can't say that I got into that, unfortunately.
Okay. Man, it's always that's always interesting, and that's why I ask people's origin stories, because I always like to see, the nature versus nurture of what were they exposed to as a younger person, and then how did that shape and how did that guide their path?
Sure.
So that's a great experience. And I don't think I ever told you this, Dakota, as well. I grew up in Japan because my dad was in the Air Force and we were moving all around the planet. So I was in a new country every couple of years. But I
I didn't
spent
know
a
that. No.
large portion in Japan, and this was when Dragon Ball Z was airing at the time. And so not only was not number one, it was Toriyama's art that it was like, as a kid, I was like, give me more of this. I need everything he's ever drawn, everything that his
Yeah.
artwork exists on. And so my mom would take me to like the Japanese bookstores, and we would get the mangas. and I could not read Japanese, and this is before anything was translated. So I had to make up the stories in my head. And once when I was in college, it was airing on Toonami, and I was like, "Wait a minute, this is nothing like the stories that I was creating in my head. This is way better." So I have a huge Dragon Ball s- uh, influence in my life, and so I
That's
introduced it to
cool.
my wife, and she loves Dragon Ball now. So yeah, I
That's
never
awesome.
told you that, but yeah,
No,
I
you
have
never
that
did.
Dragon
That's
Ball
pretty cool.
fandom,
That's pretty cool. Speaking of
and that's
Dragon Ball. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Can I say
Oh
one
no,
more thing?
no, I think you were. Oh, you have the better transitions.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Better transition. Come on. Um, when it comes to Dragon Ball and like just talk about like an origin story when it comes to that kind of stuff. Back in elementary school, it was for whatever reason all the boys had like folders you would bring to school, but they were all stuffed with printed out images of Super Saiyan 4 Goku and just people would find the most obscure Dragon Ball images, and a lot of it was just fan art that they would find online, and it was stuff that hadn't made it into the show at that point on
Mm.
Toonami, and we were sharing it like, oh my god, why does he have an M on his head? Oh my god, and it was such a fun time being a kid and just not knowing what's happening next,
Mm.
and just
Yeah,
next
you know,
time on Dragon Ball.
yeah. It's crazy, like, the when I think about so I'm even, more ancient than you, so my experience is, like, we didn't even have the internet at that point, so we weren't like it was literally you went to the schoolyard and, the trading cards actually was a huge way of us as Americans, we didn't know what was going on with the
Sure,
Japanese,
yeah.
but the trading cards, it was like I kind of think kind of the similar idea like you're saying is, "Wait a minute, why is he a giant ape? Why does he have an M on his head?" Like we didn't know what was going on, but we just thought the art looked cool. And
Yeah.
so that was that it's crazy to me to think people who are watching it now, number one, they can just binge the whole thing and they have access to everything now online. And we were getting bootleg. Like I had to get my uncle who was also living there as a translator. So he spoke perfect Japanese, but he would have to record the episodes on VHS and send me the VHS copy. And so that's how I was watching Dragon Ball at that
My
time.
goodness.
And then
Wow.
you go fast forward to today, and it's like, oh yeah, I can get it every episode on my phone. I can watch it whenever. But yeah. So on that note, Goku Kakarot is a kind of a Superman Kal-El-esque figure, and you said we were gonna talk about the James Gunn Superman,
Oh
so I wanna
yes.
get your thoughts
I'm
on
sorry.
yeah, what are you thinking?
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry. I totally just got stuck on a
Oh, no
Tom
worries.
Welling
Yeah, this is
kick.
perfect.
Um,
I love
I actually
this. Uh-huh.
haven't even seen um, the Superman and Lois show on CW yet. I've heard great things, but I'm looking
Mm,
forward to eventually just binging that one day because what I have seen looks pretty good. When it comes to James Gunn, I think he has I think his head's in the right place, at least from everything that I've seen online from him. He's studying his All Star Superman. He's been hinting about directing a Superman movie for far longer than he's actually been, officially attached to the project, as far as we know.
right,
And
right.
I think his idea of the character is going to be far closer to the you know reverential character that we hold
Mm,
in our head and our hearts. We're
yes,
going to get
yes.
closer to the Brandon Ruth,
Mm,
Christopher Reeve type Superman character in a
yes,
more modern
yes.
setting. So I actually am a
Mm.
big fan of the Brandon Ruth Superman Returns. I know a lot of people aren't, but that's a movie that I love. um
Yeah, that was that one is, not a movie overall that I've returned to a lot, but there's moments like the bullet in the eye, and like there's just
Yeah,
certain saving the plane. There are moments in that movie that I really love, and I love Brandon Routh. But the movie overall is I just haven't returned to it very often, so maybe I should give it
yeah.
another watch. But yeah,
You know what?
we deserve.
Just give that that plane scene another watch. It's one of the most heroic
Mm,
scenes in superhero just movies in general. Like, you know, we have Lois Lane just in a plane seat, and all of a sudden she looks outside, and she, you know, Superman's been gone for 5 years, and all of a sudden you see that cape flying by your window,
mm,
and then this guy just comes and stops a plane, you know, and it's a struggle. It's not something that he just does, you know. It's like a lot of
mm,
nowadays you would have like um it would be no issue to stop a
right,
plane
right,
because, you know, I'm
right.
super powerful, but the struggle that it took clearly to do that was just so cool, and it's just I don't know, it's one of those scenes that stuck with me. All right, going back to James Gunn, I'm
Mm.
sorry. I think that we're going to get back to that type of Superman hopeful character, and I think where that really starts isn't, you know, finding a cool tone. It isn't about finding necessarily the right actor, even though it kind of is. It's about finding your Clark Kent. I think that is the
Mm.
most important aspect
Yes,
of it because
yes.
that's who he wants to be. You know, that's
Mm.
the character that he's hiding behind, and I think that that is kind of the most important aspect of the Superman character in from my perspective. I know it's not the same for everyone, and I think that's where the Zack Snyder films fell flat with me. Is that I never once bought this guy as Clark Kent, unfortunately. But
Yeah, yeah, that is unfortunate. I think that version of Superman, really goes back to when they did the reboot, the Man of Steel reboot of John Byrne, and that artwork of John Byrne is when I was growing up what I thought of as Superman. I thought of like I think that was what was on all the promotional materials and posters and toys at the
yeah,
time. So it became my version of Superman, and I think that was the one where it was like, oh yeah, Clark is the guy. Like that's his personality, and the the morals, and this goes back to like what we were talking about, getting morals from Superman. Him getting his morals from Ma and Pa Kent, and
mm,
the way that he was raised, and this is that nature versus nurture argument again. The way that he was raised is the reason he's the greatest superhero. That's the reason why he's the best guy is because of his parents, his parental figures. And me now, as a dad, that also means something to me. And I think that has it hits differently now as I'm a father myself, and I want my son to be Superman. I want him to be the best man, in the world. So I think that's going to be interesting. I've been looking forward to what geeky things my son gravitates towards. He's still in that he's in between 2 and 3 right now, so he still hasn't
okay.
kind of picked what he wants
But
yet,
he'll get
but
there soon.
he's
He'll get there soon.
yeah, he's noticing Spider-Man a lot. Like I have Spider-Man on my Apple Watch as the wallpaper, and every time he sees it, he'll look at it and he'll point to I have posters like in my bathroom and other places of Spider-Man, and he'll look at my watch and go, "Hey, that's the same guy." And I'm like, "Yeah,
That's really
yeah."
funny.
So maybe he'll be a Spider-Man fan. I don't know,
Hey,
but
Spider-Man isn't it's never wrong to be a Spider-Man fan.
yeah. But I'm definitely looking forward to James Gunn's take on it. And like you said, that was what I heard first, even before he took over as the current DC position that he's in. I was listening to a podcast and he was talking about how they had approached him and they said, "You can have any character you want. Who would you want to work?" This was, I think he was promoting Suicide Squad at the time, and they were like, "You can have any character," and he was like, "Superman. Like Superman is the one. That's my dream to do a Superman
Yeah.
story," and so that it's like everything started with Superman, like you said. the first superhero, and there's so many things that go back and can trace their evolution to Superman. So I'm hoping James Gunn, as a writer, is able to craft a story that we all fall in love with, and maybe this is what kind of brings the next generation to gravitate towards Superman. You know, not the Zack Snyder Man of Steel Superman, but this new James Gunn version. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited,
We'll
and
see.
I'm excited to get the Dakota Superman timeline when that
Oh
movie
man,
comes out.
all all of one film. Yeah. Um, well, the DCEU is coming to a close supposedly, so maybe I'll be able to get like a final, like a concrete
Ooh.
timeline on that. So that would actually be kind of nice because I've never been in that position before. Like these universes that I'm tracing just keep growing. Like the MCU, like by the time I get a new complete MCU timeline, there's two more films. So
Right. Yeah. Man.
we will see. I'm looking forward to that. There's a lot of stuff to look forward to. But yeah, the Superman Legacy seems like something to definitely look out for.
Man, I cannot wait. Before you get out of here, Dakota, I gotta ask for
Okay.
your current in 2023. What is your current feeling about Star Wars? Do you think it's in a good place? Do you think it's in need of some help? What do you think overall, being a Star Wars fan in May of 2023? What are your thoughts?
Man, if you had asked me this a month ago, I would have been at a different spot. No, I I'm hopeful. Oh, at the end of the day, I'm always hopeful for future Star Wars because while we've had a couple duds with recent shows, and you may have a totally different opinion about all of this than I do, but I personally felt that Mando season 3, although it had some serious highs, also had some serious lows. Same with Book of Boba Fett, and same with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Unfortunately,
Mm,
because that shouldn't happen to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anyway, um,
yeah.
I still enjoyed each of those shows. I do. I do.
Right.
The way I see it is this is just a thing that happens in the universe, and it's just something I gotta learn to enjoy, and move past it. And I've kind of like come to um, live with the motto that if you ever don't like anything about Star Wars, the best way to cope with that is to simply consume more Star Wars,
Yeah.
because inevitably the thing that you didn't like will be answered or will be potentially retconned or reasoned, or you don't like that Palpatine is back. Well, let's talk about how he was cloned in the next 3 years, and we'll
Yes.
explain the entire backstory of Rise of Skywalker, so you never have to question it ever again. And you know what, it does make it a little bit
Yes.
better. It does.
Yeah.
It's a cool it's That's the cool thing about Star Wars, is that like if you don't like something, you can just watch more or read more, or
Yes.
so I'm excited to see what they do, with patching up some of the things that I'm not huge on right now, but ultimately I do think that we have some cool stuff coming down the line. I'm really excited about Ahsoka. I really am excited about Ahsoka as a continuation of Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars the Clone Wars,
Yes.
and
Yes.
starting to bridge the Mandoverse into whatever Dave Filoni's film is going to be down the line.
Right.
I'm
Right.
excited about the 3 films that they have announced. Hopefully, they happen. There's a long history of Star Wars titles being announced and then just being pulled away from me.
Right. Yeah.
But we shall see. I'm hopeful. I still love Star
Nice. Yeah,
Wars.
that's
It's my
you're in
thing.
the
Yeah.
exact same camp as me. It's it's something where even when I'm not as high on things like Book of Boba Fett, I'm always hopeful for the next thing, and you can't bring me down, basically. Like, anyone who tells me that Star Wars sucks, or like, "Oh, that was terrible," I have that exact mentality of, like you just said, "Oh, well, I'll just watch the next thing." There's so much good stuff. It's not like it was. Now this was before, like I said, I'm ancient, so There was a time where I thought Return of the Jedi was the last movie. Like we were never going to get
Yeah.
anything else after Return of the Jedi. So we're living in an era now where it's like, yeah, there's plenty of, whether it's a comic book, a video game, um, novels, new TV shows, movies. Like there's so much Star Wars content that you, whatever the next thing is, might be your cup of tea. We got Visions coming out
Yeah,
tomorrow. Like
just think about
there's so many
just
good things.
I think we have like 6 or 7 new individual comic books that came out this week for Star Wars. We have a new book that came out, Path of Vengeance. That's a High Republic book. You have the High Republic kids show, Young Jedi Adventures. You
Yes,
have
yes.
Visions coming out.
My
Oh,
son
this
knows.
is all this week. This is all this week. There's a lot to love.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
so anyway, yeah,
Ah,
that's
man,
my
this is a
thoughts on Star
great
Wars.
week.
It's a great week to be. Hey, happy May the 4th, an early happy May the 4th to you.
Yes, and to you. This is a great week for Dakota. This is a great week for me. And this is a great week for you because you just got a fantastic episode of the Vactor-Verse. Dakota, I can't thank you enough for joining me. Like I said, you are my good luck charm, sir. Anytime you have an appearance, I think it's going to be gold. I think it's going to be fantastic. But we had a great talk, and I'm really happy that you were able to join me for today.
I'm so happy to be here. This was an awesome conversation. I hope everyone enjoys it and continues to experience the Vactor-Verse in all its many forms on TikTok and uh, YouTube. Yeah, so
Yes.
I'm excited to be on your show in the future, and we'll talk some more about other fun geeky stuff. Talk more about
Yes,
what brought us to this place.
yes, this will definitely not be your last appearance. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for the next appearance in the Vactorverse, where can they find you online, Dakota?
Yeah, you can find me at Geekritique. That's GeekRitique, all one word. It's a little confusing, but you'll find it, or you can look up MCU Timelines and you'll find me there on YouTube. And yeah, so I am constantly working on the next thing. But yeah, so you'll find me there, or you can find me at Geekritique_DAC at Twitter. And those are my two primary places. But you can also, I also have another podcast, Project Geekology, that I do every couple weeks with my good friend Anthony. So yeah, you can look up Project Geekology wherever you listen to your podcasts, and that's me.
Yeah, all those things are fantastic. Anytime there's a new Geek Critique YouTube video or a new tweet, which is very often, I get excited. I always think there's got to be some great content coming if Dakota's putting it out. So everyone check out all of those places. Check out the
Oh,
podcast.
thank you.
And also check out the previous episode. Like I said, that was back when we were the Comic Book Kaiju podcast. But Dakota had a fantastic MCU timeline breakdown. So I want everyone out there to check it out. It is, like I said, the most popular podcast on my feed, but we can always use some more views and some more listens. So check that out. You can find it here in the Vactor-Verse on the YouTube channel and wherever your podcasts are found. I want to thank Dakota, like I said, for joining me today. Dakota loves comics, and you should too.